Last November, I hit the road to visit my family for Thanksgiving. They lived about 20 hours away, which, in road trip terms, meant either 3 days of relaxed driving or 2 days of pushing myself harder than I should. I'd done this drive before, and every single time, I dreaded it. The route was brutally uneventful. My parents lived on a small ranch that felt like the middle of nowhere. So most of the trip was just endless fields or miles of untouched forest. After hours of seeing nothing but the same view, the drive always turned mind-numbing. The first part of the journey was the only section one somewhat enjoyed. The usual busy highways that anyone leaving a major city would take. But near the end of my second day on the road, I merged off that main highway onto, well, basically the forgotten sibling of a highway. It was still technically a highway, but it was a single-lane road that hardly anyone used. No truckers, barely any travelers, and it mostly connected to small towns that barely showed up on maps. I reached that stretch around 7 or 8 in the evening, so I wasn't planning to go much farther. I was hoping I'd come across a town with a cheap motel soon. I kept driving for another 2 hours. The road was pitch black and completely deserted. My headlights cut through thick fog, but other than that, it was just emptiness. I hadn't found a single place to stop for the night. No motels, no rest areas, nothing. So when I finally spotted a tiny gas station, I decided it was better than sleeping on the side of the road. The place looked ancient, like an old family-run station stuck in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't see houses, streetlights, or even the faintest sign of a town in the distance. But the station itself was lit, and the pump worked. So I topped off my tank after filling up. I parked on the side of the building and walked inside to see if I could crash in the lot for a few hours. Inside was one man behind the counter, maybe around 50, and he looked genuinely surprised to see someone walk in that late. Definitely not the kind of place that gets midnight customers. I asked if it was okay to park for a couple hours. He immediately told me they were closing in about 15 minutes and he'd be leaving, but if I didn't mind being alone at the station all night, then he had no issue with it. I thanked him, grabbed a couple energy drinks for the next day, and headed back to my car. But as I walked out, his wording replayed in my mind. If you're comfortable staying here overnight. The way he said it didn't feel casual. It felt off. The way he said it lingered in my mind. It almost sounded like a warning, like most people wouldn't feel safe staying there. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself he only meant that most travelers don't usually sleep in their cars. Not that this specific place was some kind of problem. I got back into my car, reclined the seat, and set an alarm for 3 a.m., roughly 4 hours of rest if I managed to sleep at all. About 15 minutes later, I heard him lock up the station and drive off. When his car disappeared, the entire place changed. Without those bright lights, everything went pitch black. No sounds, no movement. Just stillness. It was honestly unsettling being alone out there, but I closed my eyes anyway, trying to force sleep. I'm not even sure if I actually drifted off. I just laid there for what felt like an hour, eyes shut, trying to relax. When suddenly I heard the crunch of tires rolling across gravel. Slow, approaching, getting closer. My eyes snapped open. Through the darkness, I saw a dark pickup truck creeping into the lot, right next to my car. My heart jumped. Who would pull into a closed gas station in the middle of nowhere at this hour? And what made it worse, their headlights were completely off. I couldn't see the driver. I couldn't even make out a silhouette, just the outline of the truck, barely visible. But the way it was positioned, facing toward me, made me think someone inside could see me perfectly. Everything about it felt wrong. My chest tightened from the unease. I wasn't sticking around to see what they wanted. I shot my seat upright, started my engine, and pulled away fast. Maybe it was nothing, but every instinct screamed that something bad was about to happen. A deserted gas station, lights off, dead quiet, and suddenly a truck sneaks in with no headlights straight toward my car. There was no innocent explanation coming to mind. Once I got back onto the road, the tension eased a little, until not even a quarter mile away, my front tire slammed into something lying in the middle of the gravel road. I only caught a quick glimpse in my headlights before running it over. Whatever it was, the hit sounded rough. I pulled over to the side and checked my rearview mirror, but it was too dark and too far behind me, so I parked, stepped out, and started walking back. The silence outside felt heavy, just the cold wind brushing across the empty road as I made my way toward the object. When I finally got close enough to see its shape, my stomach tightened. It looked like a giant duffel bag, a really big one. And the worst part? In that dim light, it almost resembled a body bag. Maybe my imagination was getting carried away, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Before I could get any closer, I heard it, tires grinding through the gravel in the distance. Slow, approaching. I looked up, but all I saw was darkness. While the sound crept nearer and nearer, I sprinted back to my car and dove inside. As soon as I slammed the door shut, the sound of those tires grew even louder. I glanced into my mirror just in time to see the same pickup truck burst into view behind me, flying down the road at an insane speed. They blew past the thing lying in the road without slowing down, then suddenly cut the wheel, skidding to a stop directly behind my car. Gravel flew everywhere as their brakes screeched. Both the driver's door and the passenger door flew open at the same time. Two guys jumped down, fast. But by then, I was already flooring it. My heart pounding so hard, it felt like it was shaking my whole body. My hands were trembling like crazy as I tried dialing 911. Each time the call connected for a second, then dropped. No signal. Out in the middle of nowhere, there was nothing. The only good thing was that the truck didn't seem to follow me. I never saw their headlights again. That lonely stretch of highway went on for another 45 minutes before I finally reached another road that led towards civilization. When I finally had service, I called the police again. Not sure how much it helped, but at least I tried. About half an hour later, they called me back and said they found absolutely nothing. No truck, no men, no bag, nothing at all for the rest of the trip. And honestly, long after I got home, I kept thinking about what I ran into that night. I still have no idea what those guys were doing, or what that huge object was lying in the road. But whatever it was, the thought of it still sends a shiver up my spine. I never used that route again, and I've never heard a single update about what might have happened out there. I was on a cross-country road trip, making my way from the East Coast to the West Coast. Part of it was to visit friends, but mostly I was just doing it for the experience, seeing new places, hitting the open road. I'd only ever flown to cities out west before, so I was excited to at least drive through and check out some of the areas I'd never seen. My route was planned down to the highways, but on the third day, I ran into a section of the road that was under heavy construction. My maps told me the highway ahead was closed and rerouted me onto a small, single-lane road running alongside the main route. Right away, I noticed something odd. No other cars followed the same detour. Everyone else turned off elsewhere. I shrugged it off, assuming they had different destinations, maybe heading toward a nearby city. I didn't know the area well, but I wasn't worried. My maps insisted I was on the correct path, and this little side road basically ran parallel to the highway anyway. The only difference was that it was narrower, with a lower speed limit. I think I got on it around 7 p.m., so darkness had already fallen. I should also mention that it was early winter, and light snow was beginning to dust the road as I drove further. The emptiness of the road became more pronounced. Eventually, it curved away from the main highway entirely, leading into what looked like nothing. I had no idea where it was taking me, but my maps insisted I was still on track. The estimated arrival time hadn't changed, so I figured I was fine. After at least an hour, I finally spotted a cluster of lights in the distance. A small town. Thankfully, I was running low on gas. But as I got closer, it became clear it was tiny, maybe 15 to 20 buildings, most with only a few weak outdoor lights. The town looked old, run down, and almost abandoned. Even with some lights on, it gave off a strange, uneasy vibe. I drove up to the gas station, a small, mostly vacant building sitting at the edge of town. The gas station had a flickering light on the overhang, but the pump seemed to be working, so I got out and started filling my tank. That's when I noticed another car, a small, gray SUV, parked at the pump across from me. Its windows weren't tinted, so I could see straight through. The inside was packed with suitcases and bags, like the owners were also on a road trip. But the strange part? No one was inside. No one was outside either. I had no idea where they'd gone. The gas station building was clearly closed, and that SUV didn't belong to this town. They looked like they'd just pulled over temporarily, but it made me uneasy. The town itself was eerie, quiet to an almost unnatural degree. The empty streets, the shadows of the old buildings, the complete silence. It sent chills down my spine every time I looked out into the darkness. To make matters worse, the gas was filling incredibly slowly. A single gallon seemed to take forever, not nearly enough to get me to the next town, if there even was one nearby. And then, after maybe 2 minutes of standing in the dark silence, I heard it. A sudden, piercing scream. It was a man's voice, shouting for help. My heart jumped, and I recoiled, smacking my shoulder against the gas pump. I spun around to look in the direction of the scream, but all I saw was pitch black nothingness. There was something off about the sound. Not just the scream. The way it carried through the emptiness, it didn't feel right. I took a cautious step back from my car, trying to get a better view of the area. Then the man screamed again, louder this time. The second scream was much closer, like he was somewhere just beyond the edge of the gas station's light. I stared into the darkness for maybe 20 seconds, waiting for another sound, when something suddenly darted across my peripheral vision. It looked like a person sprinting through the dark behind the gas station. And before I could even process that, I saw more movement in a different direction. It felt like my brain was malfunctioning. Every instinct I had screamed at me to leave immediately. I yanked the gas pump out as fast as I could. While I did, I heard footsteps, several of them, running through the grass surrounding the station. I bolted into my car, slamming the door just as a group of men emerged from the darkness. They all moved together, like they were waiting for this exact moment, and they started rushing toward my car. I threw the car into drive and tore out of there, speeding back down that empty road. The whole time, my mind kept circling back to that SUV packed with luggage, no driver in sight. Whoever was traveling in that car must have arrived just before I did. Was the voice I heard calling for help one of them? Or was the voice just bait to lure the driver out? The same way it almost lured me? There wasn't even a police station in that creepy little town. So even though I reported what happened, I don't know if anyone ever went to check it out. I never got any answers about what really went on there. I was 23, driving across the country in this tiny beat-up van that honestly had no business being on a road trip. It wasn't one of those fancy vans people convert into mini homes. Mine was basically a mattress tossed in the back and a bunch of cardboard, boxes sliding around every time I hit a bump. I was heading toward the West Coast, back to my parents' place, just to drop off most of my stuff while I tried to figure my life out. Everything felt chaotic, and this trip was supposed to help me clear my head. At least that's what I told myself. This was my first time doing a long cross-country drive, without staying in motels or anywhere comfortable. The first full day wasn't terrible, just long. I pushed through nearly 14 hours of driving, and by the time midnight rolled around, I was drained and ready to crash anywhere. So when I signed for a rest stop about 20 miles ahead, I figured perfect. There'll be trucks, a few cars, maybe some late-night travelers. But the moment I pulled in, my stomach dropped. The rest stop sat way off the highway, down a lonely exit ramp that disappeared into thick woods. And there wasn't a single car, not one truck, not one person, just me. It felt less like a rest area and more like an abandoned building forgotten in the middle of a forest. You'd think the emptiness would be peaceful. It wasn't. It felt wrong. Too quiet. Too hidden. I stepped out of the van to use the restroom, and the silence hit me. No traffic sounds. Just the buzzing of cicadas echoing through the trees inside. The building was surprisingly clean, which somehow made it creepier. Like it was either rarely used or never used. Walking back to my van, that uneasy feeling came back even stronger. The woods were so dense, it felt like something could be standing between the trees, watching. I kept brushing it off. First night sleeping in a van, you're just paranoid, I told myself. I got inside, pulled the curtain across the front cabin, and laid down. Exhaustion took over, and I passed out almost instantly. But sometime around 3 a.m., I jerked awake. Voices. Outside my van. Two men. Talking low. Sounded like they were standing right next to the van, maybe in the spot beside me. I glanced at my phone to 3 a.m. sharp. The parking lot was completely empty when I got here. The idea that someone had not only shown up, but parked right next to me in the middle of nowhere, it made no sense. I remember sitting there, heart pounding, hoping, praying that it was exactly that. Just people parking beside me. But something in my gut told me it wasn't that simple. I slowly lifted myself up and opened the curtain, just enough to peek outside. My heart dropped immediately. The parking lot was completely empty. Not a single car anywhere. Then I turned toward the opposite window, and my blood ran cold. A man was standing inches away, staring straight into my eyes through the glass. I froze. He jerked back out of sight, slipping behind the van where I couldn't see him. I backed away and yanked the curtain closed again, my chest tight and my hands shaking. Then I heard it, two voices, whispering back and forth, low, fast, almost frantic. And then, silence, total silence. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. I waited, probably 5 of the longest minutes of my life, before slowly pulling the curtain aside again. The parking lot was empty. The men were gone. I checked every angle, even the mirrors, nothing, which only meant one thing. They had stepped back into the woods, and that thought made my stomach twist. I grabbed my keys with trembling hands, started the engine, and pulled away from that rest stop as fast as my van could go. There was no way I was closing my eyes there ever again. I was halfway up the ramp back to the highway when something felt wrong. The van wasn't gaining speed. It was dragging, struggling. I glanced at the dash. A small red light was blinking. Rear right tire. And now that I noticed it, I could feel it, the thud and drag of a blown-out wheel scraping against the road. I checked the mirror and saw it clearly. My tire was destroyed. My stomach sank so hard it hurt. It had to be them. Those men. Panic came rushing in despite my efforts to stay calm. I kept checking every mirror, convinced they were going to appear out of the darkness any second. I knew I couldn't push the van up the incline with the tire shredded. I was stuck in the worst possible place. Then I heard something outside. A crack. A step. Leaves shifting. I lifted my eyes toward the tree line beside the ramp. My whole body tightened with dread. Before I could even fully turn, There was a sharp knock on my window. I whipped my head around. It was him, the same man from before, smiling. Tapping on the glass like this was some casual roadside chat. Need some help? He said, voice disturbingly calm. I can fix that tire for you. Doesn't look like you're getting anywhere with it like that. He wasn't in a car. He hadn't walked up from the road. And he didn't mention the second guy at all. The one I heard him whispering to earlier. Something was very, very wrong. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, praying he'd back off when he realized I was calling the police. Instead, he knocked again, harder this time, telling me I didn't need to call anyone and he could take care of it. As soon as the operator answered, the man snapped, pounding on the window, pulling at the door handle, shaking the van. That was the moment I knew staying put was not an option. Waiting for cops wasn't an option. I had to get out. Right now, I threw the van into reverse and started rolling backward down the ramp. The van groaned like it was about to fall apart, but I didn't care. I just needed distance. I needed space between me and him. The engine sounded like it was dying, but it was still moving, and that was enough. The sound coming from that destroyed tire was horrifying. A mix of scraping, thumping, and metal grinding that made me think the wheel might rip right off and leave me stranded completely. And the worst part? The man was chasing after my van as I rolled backward, literally running after me toward the rest stop. As soon as I hit the flat surface of the parking lot, I slammed the gas pedal down. The van lurched forward, fighting the damage, but I didn't stop this time. I pushed it up the ramp with everything it had, and by some miracle, it crawled back onto the highway. I kept driving, even though every second the tire screamed against the pavement, probably destroying the van. After I'd put enough distance between myself and the rest stop, I pulled over and called the police again, waiting for them to show up. Whoever those men were, they didn't seem to have a vehicle of their own, and they didn't follow me onto the highway. It made sense. That rest stop was so hidden and isolated that they could have done whatever they planned without being caught. Out on the highway, they risked being seen. When the cops finally arrived and searched the area, the men were gone completely. The more I thought about it, the more it hit me. If I had stayed in that van, even for another minute, they would have gotten inside. And if I had opened the door or let that guy help with my tire, the same tire he clearly slashed, the other man was probably waiting in the woods. For the moment, I was distracted. I don't know exactly what their plan was. Maybe they wanted the van and everything inside it, but something about their actions, the way they hid, stalked, whispered, and chased, made me think it wasn't just about stealing. Leaving me alive to talk about it didn't seem like part of their plan. And the terrifying truth is, I'm almost certain that night I came way too close to it being my last.